Hi, my name is Moana, and this is my reading buddy Spike. And I am a reading and writing lover who disliked English class as both a student and a teacher, and I am now documenting my journey of rediscovering my love for words. A few weeks ago, I created a TBR list of 12 Christmas books across all different genres and shared it in a previous video. So if you missed that one and want to check it out, I'll leave a link in the description. I feel like the majority of Christmas books are romances, and not everybody is a romance fan, so I was determined to find some that don't fall under that category. Together with Google, I compiled a list of books that I found, 2 that were in the romance genre, but several more that weren't. I tried to read as much from the list as I could, and today I'll be sharing my thoughts in this video. The first was a mystery thriller titled Silent Night by Mary Higgins Clark. First of all, I have to say that this book was dark. It starts off with a family who is not having a happy holiday season because they all recently found out that the father has leukemia. To help the 2 young sons get their minds off of the father's illness for a while, the mother takes them to see Christmas lights in New York City, but while listening to carolers on the street, she accidentally drops her wallet. Her son sees this and also sees a stranger pick it up and run away, so he chases after her. This leads to him following her onto the subway and to a bad part of town. The person who picked it up was just released from prison for aiding her fugitive brother, who is still on the run, and ends up coming to her for help. According to the book preview, a murder takes place and the young boy ends up witnessing it, but I have to admit that I didn't get that far into the story. I am very much a mood reader, and I just wasn't in the mood to read a story about murder, even if it does have a holiday twist to it. According to some of the book reviews, it does have a happy ending, but you have to get through all of the dark and grisly stuff first, so I decided to DNF this book. The next one was Wishin and Hopin by Wally Lamb, which is in the literary fiction category. While I was editing my TBR list video, I found out that there is actually a movie made from this book, so I decided that I might watch it later instead of reading it. I understand that usually the books are always better than the movies, but with the way that time is limited and I wasn't dying to read this one, I'm okay with just watching it later if I have time. From the romance genre was Royal Holiday by Jasmine Guillory. I hesitated to read this book since I was trying to find something that wasn't romance, but I have to say that out of all of the books on this list, this is one of the books that I enjoyed the most. The female main character of this novel is an older African-American woman who accompanies her daughter to England for the holidays, and she meets and falls in love with an African-British man who is the secretary to the Queen of England. I had so much fun reading this story, and it was so refreshing to see a couple who was older and of a different ethnicity to what we normally see, because I feel like almost every single romance that I've read this past year has always been about hot blondes and redheads in their early 20s. It was really nice to read something different, and I really liked seeing the different perspective of falling in love when you're older. I definitely recommend this book and can't wait to check out more from this author. Last Christmas in Paris by Hazel Gaynor and Heather Webb was a historical fiction set in England during World War I. This book was written differently since it consisted of letters written back and forth between several different people, and I have to say that I absolutely love that format. I don't see that often in books, but I think it gave such a powerful insight into the thoughts and feelings of each character. I actually listened to the audiobook of this novel, and I really recommend that because they use different narrators for each character's voice, and I felt like it made the novel become even more alive to me. I actually think that this book would be wonderful for high school students to read because it gave such a personal perspective into World War I. So it'd be much more meaningful than simply memorizing facts and figures like I had to do in history class. Similar to The Toy Makers by Robert Dinsdale that I reviewed in a previous video, it also shows us that Christmas wasn't always just a magical holiday for everyone, and there was actually a long period in history where people were forced to suffer through the holiday at war. There is also an element of romance integrated into the story, which I actually did enjoy since it did add some drama and excitement. I was surprised to see that there was a Christmas book in the sci-fi category and was really excited to read A Lot Like Christmas by Connie Willis. I found out that this is a collection of short stories, and I read the first one, which actually turned out to be much longer than your usual short story, so it almost felt like an entire novella. I was actually disappointed and confused with this one because I felt like it was more magical realism than sci-fi. In the story, the main character is working in an office, and a few days before Christmas, she spends her days buying presents, preparing Christmas cards to mail out, and preparing for her office Christmas party. A spirit shows up at her apartment and gets upset that her gifts and cards aren't eco-friendly, and he does strange things to upset her, like suddenly making a tree grow in her kitchen. The story was okay, but I couldn't really see any elements of sci-fi in it, so I didn't bother to try to read beyond that first short story. Hogfather by Terry Pratchett was from the fantasy genre. Now, I could be totally wrong, but it looked like the kind of campy humor that we see in books like Douglas Adams' The Ultimate Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I've heard so many people say that they love that book, and I've tried to read it so many times, but I think it's just not my kind of humor. So I assumed that Hogfather wouldn't be my kind of thing either. So as such, I didn't read this one, but maybe I will one day in the future just to at least try and check it out. Nosferatu, I think that's how you pronounce it, by Joe Hill is a dark fantasy horror novel, and I found out that it was made into a mini-series. Like I shared earlier, I wasn't in the mood to read about murder, and I'm actually not a horror novel reader, so I did not even bother to try to read this book. Maybe one day, if I get bored and I am in the mood to scare myself, then I'll try to watch the mini-series. I did try reading Skipping Christmas by John Grisham, which is a contemporary fiction novel. I almost got to the end and I had to stop because I was just annoyed with the book by that time. Several of the characters irritated me, but the thing that made me finally call it quits was the wife of the main character. She was written as this really annoying woman who just nagged and pushed her husband around and called him names. I feel like that kind of wife is a stereotype that I grew up seeing on TV, but I don't know if all married women are really like that. So after a while, I just couldn't stand reading about the wife and I gave up and DNF'd this book. I did find out later that there is a movie based on it called Christmas with the Cranks, and I don't know how that one is, but I might try to watch it just to see if the wife is as insufferable in the movie as she is in the book. I normally love cozy mysteries, and I started reading 6 Geese A-Slaying by Donna Andrews, but for some reason it just didn't pique my interest. It actually sounded like so many other holiday cozy mysteries that I've read before that I felt bored and immediately, and I decided to DNF it. I really wanted to read and enjoy the gothic fiction The Haunted Man and the Ghost's Bargain by Charles Dickens. And I tried so many times to listen to the audiobook and read the book myself, but I just couldn't get into this. The language was just so difficult for me to understand, and I felt like I was lost the whole time. So I very reluctantly decided to DNF this book. If you are a fan of Dickens, I would love to hear your thoughts and ideas as to how to make it more understandable and enjoyable to read his books, because I keep wondering if I'm just not intelligent enough to get it, or if there's something that I'm lacking in with my reading skills. The young adult novel Dash and Lily's Book of Dares by Rachel Kahn and David Levithan was made into a Netflix movie, so rather than reading the book, I decided that I will try to watch it since it's another book where I don't feel like I'm dying to read. Finally, in my research, I found recommendations for the middle grade novel When Christmas Comes by Katherine Patterson. But to be honest, I couldn't find this book anywhere online, so I don't even know if it actually exists. So obviously I did not read it. But if you do know of where I can get it, then please do let me know. To sum all of this up, I think what I learned from this experience of making and trying to read my Christmas TBR across all different genres is that Christmas is a time for romance after all. It's funny how the 2 books that I actually completely loved were romances, which showed me that at least for me personally, Christmas is a time for romantic stories. By the time I get this video up, I believe that it will already be Christmas Eve, and I have to say that I'm kind of sad that this festive time of the year is coming to an end. I've been seeing a lot of people already talking about books that are going to be released in the new year, but I don't know if I'm ready to stop reading Christmas romances just yet, especially since I clearly saw how much I enjoyed reading them. So I would love to hear from you. What is your favorite genre of Christmas stories? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me for this video, and if you enjoyed it, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to see more of my book reviews. Until next time, happy reading and see you soon. Bye!